It was one of those afternoons where the house felt like it had slipped into a dreamlike state, with sunlight pouring through the windows and painting long, warm streaks of gold across the polished wooden floors. The soft whir of the air conditioner provided the only background noise as I methodically sorted through the laundry on the sofa, my hands moving on autopilot, the routine so familiar that it barely required any conscious effort. Yet my thoughts were anything but calm and settled. I couldn't quite pinpoint the last time Greg had given me a real, heartfelt embrace. Not just a quick pat on the back or a rushed goodbye before heading off to his job, but something genuine that stirred a sense of warmth and connection deep inside, leaving me feeling truly appreciated and close. So much time had gone by, but the ache from that missing closeness lingered as sharply as if it had just happened yesterday. My husband had turned into more of a distant figure within our own home, swallowed up by endless work calls, overflowing inboxes, and the constant glow from his smartphone. He wasn't gone in a physical sense, but the emotional gap felt vast and heavy. Glancing at my reflection in the glass pane, with the fading light of the day highlighting the faint creases starting to form near my eyes, I realized at 33 I wasn't old by any means, but I no longer saw the light-hearted young woman who once stared back at me with boundless energy. My fingers absent-mindedly tugged at the edge of my light top, the soft material feeling familiar against my skin in a way that was both soothing and a reminder of everyday life. For a brief second, I wondered when was the last time anyone had really noticed me, not just in passing, but truly seen me as a person with thoughts and feelings worth sharing. And then my mind drifted to Nathan. He'd been staying with us for several months now, fresh out of university, and back home to build up some savings while he hunted for a steady job. At 22, he carried all the qualities that Greg used to embody so effortlessly, full of life, energetic, and naturally at ease with himself and the world around him. At first, his being here had simply underscored the growing distance between my husband and me. But over time, it had evolved into something different, more like a quiet companionship that filled some of the empty spaces in the house. I noticed how his easy laughter could echo through the rooms, brightening the atmosphere, and how his face would light up when he talked about his plans for the future, his dreams and ambitions. Even though I tried not to dwell on it too much, I appreciated how his casual shirts fit him comfortably, and how a faint, fresh scent would sometimes hang in the air after he'd passed through a room, like a subtle reminder of his presence. It felt wrong to think of him in any complicated way. I knew that deep down, but emotions don't always follow the rules we set for them. The sound of footsteps pulled me out of my reverie, and I realized Nathan was rummaging around in the kitchen, the clatter of bottles from the fridge and the soft patting of his feet on the tile floor reaching my ears. Suddenly, the whole place felt a bit cozier, the air a touch more lively, as though just having someone else around could shift the entire mood of the home. "Nathan!" I called out, my voice steady and composed, masking the swirl of reflections swirling inside me. He appeared in the doorway a moment later, his tall frame backlit by the kitchen's glow, dressed in a simple shirt and comfortable pants, his hair a bit tousled as if he'd just woken from a quick nap. "Could you help me with something?" "Sure thing," he replied, stepping into the room with that effortless ease of his, the kind of quiet confidence that made him so approachable. I looked away briefly, my hands fiddling with the edge of my shirt as a loose thread caught my attention. "Just need a hand adjusting this," I said, my voice softening a bit, almost to a murmur. There was a pause, hanging in the air like the final echo of a quiet song about to fade away. Then I felt him step closer, his hands gently reaching out, to fix the minor issue with care, his touch firm yet respectful, deliberate in a way that conveyed simple helpfulness. "Is that better?" he asked, his voice low and even, almost a whisper. "Yes," I replied, barely audible. The room felt smaller somehow, the space between us closing in with each passing second, but it was just the ordinary closeness of family, helping one another. His hands lingered only as long as needed, and I could feel the warmth of his presence nearby, like a comforting reminder that I wasn't alone in the house. As he stepped back, I turned to face him, my hands automatically smoothing out the fabric even though it was already fine. Our eyes met, and for the first time, I saw a shared understanding there, a quiet acknowledgement of the everyday support we provided each other. "Thanks," I said, breaking the quiet, but my voice didn't carry its usual casual tone. "No worries," he responded, his words equally soft, though he stayed put for a moment longer, his gaze drifting briefly to the collar of my top before meeting my eyes again. The moment stretched, filled with unspoken appreciation for the small acts of kindness that kept the household running smoothly. Suddenly, as if the world decided to interrupt our brief interaction, his phone buzzed in his pocket, the sound pulling us back to the present. He pulled it out quickly, muttering something about needing to take the call. After he left the room, I sat there for a long while, my heart beating a little faster, replaying the simple exchange in my mind. It had been nothing out of the ordinary, really, but the warmth from his helpful touch and the subtle energy in the air suggested a deeper sense of family connection. Later that evening, as I lay in bed by myself, the memory of his assistance lingered. I closed my eyes, trying to push aside the wandering thoughts, but they kept coming back. And beneath the layers of everyday routine and quiet reflection, a question started to form. One that could change the dynamics of our home life. If such a small act of help could bring a sense of closeness, what might happen if we stopped ignoring the potential for stronger family bonds? The house that afternoon was unusually quiet, the sort of stillness that amplified every little creak in the floor and the far-off hum of appliances. I was in the bedroom, standing in front of the mirror, trying to fix the strap on my favorite black top, which had always been a bit finicky, slipping just enough to be annoying, much like so many little things in daily life. But today, it was being more stubborn than usual. I tugged at it, twisting my arm awkwardly behind my back, but it wouldn't cooperate. My reflection stared back at me, a silent challenge in my own eyes to sort it out. Asking for help wasn't something I did often. Greg was always away, it seemed, and seeking assistance had become a habit I'd nearly forgotten. But today felt different. The solitude pressed down harder, like a wide shadow swallowing the brightness. Then I heard Nathan's footsteps in the hall, the familiar thud of his shoes on the carpet. Without thinking twice, I called out to him. He paused for a second, then followed the sound of my voice. It was casual, easygoing, but there was a warmth to it that I'd overlooked before. "I need a favor," I said, as he appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame with his arms crossed comfortably, his shirt fitting him in that relaxed way. Though I knew it wasn't intentional, Nathan was just naturally at ease. "What's up?" he asked, his brow furrowing just a bit as our eyes met. I hesitated for a moment, the words catching in my throat, but I pushed on, keeping my tone light and everyday. I pointed to my shoulder, indicating the strap. "It's driving me crazy." The request hung between us like an invisible link drawing us together for a simple task. His expression shifted slightly, eyebrows lifting in mild surprise before settling into something more neutral. Sure," he said, stepping into the room. I turned my back to him, suddenly aware of all the little details. The afternoon sun highlighting the curve of my neck, the faint scent of his soap as he got closer, the sound of his steady breathing. My skin prickled slightly as his hands brushed my shoulder, tentative at first, then more sure as he adjusted the strap. "This okay?" he asked, his voice now softer, almost a whisper. "Yes," I replied, barely above a breath. The air felt thick, charged with that indefinable something that comes from shared moments in a household. His fingers were warm, his touch gentle yet purposeful, as if handling something delicate. After a beat, he stepped back a little. "I think that's got it," he said. I turned to face him, my hand unconsciously reaching up to check the strap even, though it didn't need it. Our eyes locked, and for that instant, everything else in the room faded. The light, the faint hum of the house, leaving only the intensity of a mutual glance, one that seemed to see through the walls I'd built around. My daily routine. "Thank you," I said, my voice steadier than I'd expected. He nodded, but he didn't move right away, his hands at his sides, his eyes flicking briefly to the strap before returning to mine. The moment was heavy with unspoken thanks until his phone vibrated in his pocket, breaking the spell. He fished it out, apologizing under his breath as he glanced at the screen. "I should take this," he said, heading for the door. But even as he left, his gaze lingered for a second, as if reluctant to go. Once he was gone, the room felt emptier than before, the silence louder. I sat on the edge of the bed, my fingers tracing the strap of my top, now perfectly in place. But my mind wasn't on that. Instead, I thought about the feeling of his helpful hands on my shoulder and the way his eyes had looked at me, not just as his stepmother, but as someone who needed a hand in the everyday chaos. The thought stuck with me, uninvited but persistent. It wasn't just about Nathan, it was about me, the part of me that had been starved for simple attention, touch in the form of assistance, and the kind of everyday closeness that makes life feel less isolated. For the first time in years, I felt seen. That night, as I lay in bed, I replayed the moment in my mind, every detail as clear as if it were happening all over again. His fingers hesitating before steadying, his voice softening when he asked if it was okay, his eyes lingering with something unspoken I didn't want to ignore. I knew I should feel a twinge of awkwardness, knew I should push these thoughts down and lock them away where they couldn't stir things up. But I didn't. I let them stay, let them swirl and grow, feeding the part of me that had been neglected for far too long. And as I closed my eyes, I found myself wondering, if something so simple could stir such feelings within me, what else might be lying just beneath the surface, waiting to reveal itself and change everything? It was a question I was afraid to answer, but one I was curious to explore. The days following that simple moment seemed to drag on, time stretching out endlessly, forcing me to face thoughts I wasn't ready to admit even to myself. I tried to keep busy with chores, diving into the rhythm of tidying rooms, wiping down surfaces and tending to the garden out back, the plants thriving under the sun. But no matter how hard I worked to distract myself, the memory of Nathan's helpful touch lingered like a faint echo, subtle but impossible to shake. Every corner of the house reminded me of him, the light trace of his presence in the hallway, the sound of his voice carrying from another room, the way his mug always ended up in the sink, despite my gentle reminders to use the dishwasher. Each little thing felt amplified, heightened by the quiet bond that now seemed to wrap around us like a shared understanding. I saw him again in the late afternoon, as rays of sun filtered through the living room windows, casting golden patterns on the floor. I was curled up on the couch with a book in my lap, though I wasn't really absorbing the words. My eyes scanned the pages, but my mind wandered elsewhere. I could hear him in the kitchen, the clink of dishes and the soft hum of music playing. Faintly. He came into the room carrying a glass of water, pausing for a second before stepping fully in, his presence immediately filling the space with a sense of companionship. "You look relaxed," he said, a small smile pulling at his lips. I glanced down at my tucked-up legs, the loose sweater draped over my shoulders. Relaxed wasn't quite the word, maybe thoughtful or introspective, in a way that had nothing to do with my outfit. "It's a good day for taking it easy," I replied, trying to keep my tone light, even as my heart picked up its pace. He laughed quietly, a warm sound that resonated deep within me. "Mind if I join?" he asked, gesturing to the other end of the couch. "Of course," I said, but the words came out a bit too quickly, too eager. I shifted to make space as he sat down, the cushion dipping under his weight, his leg brushing mine briefly as he stretched out. A quick accidental contact that sent a small jolt through me, one I hoped he didn't notice. We sat in silence for a while, the only noise the occasional turn of a page as I pretended to read. The tension between us palpable yet comfortable, like an invisible thread drawing us into conversation. His eyes were on me, not constant but lingering, as if he was trying to figure something out but wasn't ready to ask. Suddenly, he broke the quiet, his voice softer, almost hesitant. "Can I ask you something?" I nodded, but the words stuck in my throat. He paused, running a hand through his hair. "The other day, when I helped with your strap, did it make things awkward?" The question hung there, heavy and meaningful. I felt my cheeks warm as I searched for words. "No," I said finally, though my voice was quieter than intended. "It wasn't awkward, just unexpected." "Unexpected," he echoed, as if tasting the word, seeing where it fit in the space between us. We didn't speak for a long moment, the room feeling too quiet, the gap between us vast and tiny all at once. Then, as if pulled by some unseen force, he shifted closer, his knee touching mine again, this time on purpose. "Hey," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, his eyes searching mine. For the first time, I saw something in his gaze that I couldn't ignore, a shared vulnerability, a connection that mirrored my own need for family support. I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came. Instead, I set the book aside gently, my hand resting on the cushion between us, close enough to feel the warmth from him. His breath caught a little, and I realized how close we were, that the smallest movement could bridge the gap entirely. My heart pounded, but he didn't pull away. Instead, he leaned in slightly, his eyes locked on mine, the moment stretching like time itself was holding still. I felt the heat from him, the energy in the air around us telling me that whatever this was, it was something we both needed in our lives. "Nathan," I said, my voice shaky but firm enough to break the silence. But before I could say more, the front door opened, Greg's voice calling out from the entryway, cheerfully announcing he was home. Nathan pulled back quickly, his expression shifting to one of casual normalcy. I grabbed the book, flipping it, open and pretending to scan the blurred lines. A second later, Greg walked in, his smile wide and unaware. "You two," he said, setting his bag down. "What's going on?" "Not much," I replied, forcing a smile as I looked up. Nathan stayed quiet, but I could see the tension in him, his hands fidgeting on his lap as if grounding himself. Greg's attention was brief. He gave me a quick peck on the forehead before heading to the kitchen, leaving us alone again for a beat. Neither of us moved, the weight of what had almost been a deeper conversation pressing down. Then, without a word, Nathan stood, his movements quick and purposeful as he left the room. I stayed put, my fingers gripping the book tightly as I tried to steady my breathing, my mind racing. The memory of his look, his nearness, was etched into me. No matter what it meant, I knew one thing for sure: it wasn't over. What started as a quiet moment had turned into something more complex, and the idea of what might come next was both intimidating and promising. That evening, the storm wasn't outside but within, the house wrapped in an odd quiet, the kind that signals things are about to shift. The power had gone out unexpectedly, leaving the rooms lit by flickering candlelight, shadows dancing on the walls like silent witnesses to my unease, their shapes shifting with every gentle draft. The inner storm had been building for days, perhaps weeks, and tonight it felt closer to breaking than ever. I sat cross-legged on the living room floor, a deck of cards laid out in front of me, playing solitaire by the soft glow as a way to keep my hands and mind busy. But it wasn't working. My thoughts kept drifting to Nathan's hand brushing mine earlier that day, a brief touch that left a lingering sense of connection. He was in the kitchen now, searching the fridge for something to drink, his shadow stretching long across the hall. When he returned, his outline appeared first, broad shoulders outlined by the candle's gentle light. He had 2 glasses of lemonade, beads of moisture on the outside from the humid air. He handed one to me without a word, then sat down on the floor with a smooth motion that belied the subtle tension between us. "Thanks," I murmured, my voice softer than I'd planned, avoiding his eyes and focusing instead on the flickering flame nearby, though I could feel his presence as clearly as the heavy humidity on my skin. "You're welcome," he said, his tone equally low. He leaned back on his hands, stretching his legs out, the move casual and relaxed. But my eyes betrayed me, noting how his shirt rode up slightly, revealing a bit of tanned skin above his waistband. I forced myself to look away, but the image stuck. "Power outages always feel strange," I said, my voice cutting through the quiet, like the world paused for a minute. He agreed, his eyes still on me. "Everything seems different in the quiet." His words hung there, heavy with unspoken meaning. I shuffled the cards absent-mindedly, the sound of paper sliding together filling the void. Nathan picked up a card from the stack, turning it over and placing it down with careful focus. "Solitaire," he observed, a small smile at his mouth. "Just killing time," I replied, offering a tentative smile back. He scooted closer, close enough that I could feel his subtle warmth, his scent clean with a hint of wood, wrapping around me, making me fight the urge to close my eyes and relax fully. The air between us thickened with each second, the candles casting secretive shadows. "Do you ever feel like—" Nathan's voice trailed off as he fiddled with a card's edge. "Things aren't supposed to stay the same forever?" The question caught me off guard in its simplicity, but I knew the weight behind it. I met his gaze for the no, first time that night, my heart thumping loudly in my chest, his eyes steady and searching for an answer I wasn't sure I could give. "Change happens eventually," I said, my voice barely audible, "even when we're not ready." He nodded slowly, his eyes on mine. "Yeah." The space between us felt impossibly small now, charged with that something I couldn't ignore. My pulse quickened, as his hand moved closer to mine, almost imperceptibly. A small gesture that could be accidental, but the intent was clear. "Hey," he said softly, his voice heavy with unspoken meaning. I didn't speak, my throat tight, my mind a whirl of caution and curiosity. Then, as if guided by some invisible pull, his fingertips brushed mine, a hesitant touch that sent a spark through me. I froze. My breath caught, but I didn't pull away. The candle flames twisted, as if caught in my inner storm. Nathan's hand stayed, his touch light but purposeful, his eyes searching mine for understanding or perhaps reassurance. I couldn't look away, couldn't move, could only sit there and let the moment wash over me. "It's okay," he whispered, his voice so quiet. But it was a need that scared me, making my skin tingle and my heart race. Words failed me in the storm of emotions. Instead, I reached out, my fingers linking with his in a silent answer to the unspoken question. The moment stretched endlessly, the air thick with anticipation, and just as the tension peaked, a distant thunder rolled through the house, a reminder that the real storm raged outside. Nathan pulled back slightly, his face shifting to quiet understanding. "We should check the candles," he said, his tone steadier now, though his eyes showed the turmoil still swirling. "Yeah," I replied, my voice shaky but resolved. "We should." As he stood and started gathering the candles, I stayed on the floor, my fingers still warm from his touch. I knew that whatever this was, whatever it meant, it was far from over. The storm might have paused for now, but its echoes were just beginning. The night was calm, but the changes from what had passed were irreversible, and I knew instinctively that the real shift was still to come. The house was dimly lit, only by the soft glow of the TV screen casting shifting patterns of light on the walls. The movie played on, its dialogue a low hum in the background, but I couldn't recall the title or plot. It didn't matter. What mattered was the quiet companionship, Nathan and I on opposite ends of the couch, a cushion between us, the distance feeling both comfortable and significant. My glass of water sat untouched on the coffee table, a delicate ring of condensation forming at its base. I felt the weight of his presence, the unspoken support that had grown stronger each day. Greg was out again, his absence a constant in my life, and tonight it felt heavier than usual. Nathan had been quieter since dinner, his usual easy demeanor replaced by a thoughtfulness that mirrored my own. I stole glances at him, tracing the lines of his profile, the sharpness of his jaw, the way the flickering light highlighted his features. He seemed lost in thought, eyes on the screen but unfocused, as if elsewhere. "I can change the movie if—" "You're not into it," I said, my voice breaking the quiet, sounding more composed than I felt. He turned to me, his face softening. "No, it's fine. Just thinking." "About what?" I wanted to ask, though unsure if I wanted the answer. His gaze held mine too long, my breath catching again. The unspoken connection. That invisible thread linking us in ways hard to explain but impossible to deny. He hesitated, as if choosing his words carefully, then said, "Nothing important." But his face told a different story. I leaned back into the couch, my fingers gripping the blanket on my lap. The room felt warm, the air heavy with something indefinable. My heart raced, and I hated how obvious it felt, as if he could sense it from where he sat. I wanted to say something to break the silence, but words escaped me. Instead, Nathan shifted closer, the move almost imperceptible, my pulse quickening as the gap narrowed, the tension like static in the air. I felt his eyes on me, really seeing me, and for the first time in years I felt truly recognized, not just as a wife or stepmother, but as an individual. "Hey," he said softly, my name a whisper that sent a shiver through me. I turned to him, heart pounding. His expression was unreadable, eyes searching mine for something. The movie's sound faded, replaced by my steady breathing and the thump of my heartbeat. "What is it?" I asked, voice barely above a whisper. "I don't want to make you uncomfortable," he said, words careful, deliberate. "But I can't stop thinking about—" He trailed off, but he didn't need to finish. The meaning of what was said and unsaid hung heavy between us. My mind raced with a mix of thoughts and emotions I couldn't sort. I knew I should stop this, whatever it was, before it grew. But I couldn't speak, couldn't move, only sit there waiting for what came next. "Nathan," I began, my voice trembling. "This isn't us. We shouldn't—" "I know," he cut in, sharp, "but we both know it's wrong. But that doesn't change how I feel." His words hit me like a wave, leaving me raw and exposed, yet part of me wanted to dive deeper into the intensity. His eyes searched mine, mirroring the same struggle. Fear mixed with hope, guilt with a spark of possibility. Before I could process, he reached for my hand, his touch light and deliberate. My breath hitched as his fingers brushed mine, warmth sending a current through me. I should have pulled away, but I didn't. Instead, I let him hold my hand, his grip firm yet gentle, as if afraid I'd disappear. "I don't want to hurt you or him," he whispered, "but I can't pretend this isn't happening." His words hung, heavy and unavoidable. My mind screamed to end this madness, but my body betrayed me, leaning into the touch, craving the connection I'd missed for so long. The gap closed as he moved, nearer, his face inches from mine. I felt his breath, warm and steady, his scent clean and familiar, filling my senses. My heart pounded, but he stayed close, head tilting slightly, eyes locked, the moment frozen as time seemed to stop. "Nathan," I said, voice shaky but steady enough to hold his gaze. He didn't reply with words, but his eyes said it all. Slowly, tentatively, he leaned in, his hand cupping my face gently, thumb brushing my skin, making me lean into the touch, craving the long-denied connection. I closed my eyes, letting the moment wrap around me, his presence a comfort that broke through years of loneliness. But as quickly as it started, it ended. Nathan pulled back, breathing heavy, eyes searching mine with a mix of caution and warmth. "We can't," he murmured, barely audible. "I don't want to hurt you or him." "I know," I said, my breath unsteady. "I know." But it felt like a lie. The weight of what had happened pressed down, and I knew there was no going back. The line had been crossed and consequences waited. The silence after was deafening, filled with unspoken thoughts. As I sat there, heart racing, I wondered what came next, and if we could handle it. Morning light filtered through the curtains, soft and golden, but its warmth did little to ease the inner chaos. I sat on the bed's edge, the house's silence wrapping around me like a heavy blanket. Last night's events replayed in my mind, each detail sharper than the last. The warmth of Nathan's hand, the depth of our conversation, the way he pulled back, eyes full of regret and something more dangerous. Longing, I ran fingers through my damp hair from a fitful shower that hadn't washed away the confusion clinging to me. We hadn't gone too far, I told myself. We'd stopped before the boundary blurred forever. But I knew deep down that lines aren't just crossed by actions, they're crossed in thoughts, feelings, and the quiet moments we allow when no one's watching. Last night, every unspoken line had been erased. Footsteps in the hall made my heart leap. I straightened quickly, smoothing my shirt as if it could erase the evidence. The door creaked open. Nathan standing there, face carefully neutral but eyes betraying the storm beneath. "Hey," he said, quiet but steady. "Morning," I replied, voice a bit too high, too quick, then looked away, unable to hold his gaze. For a moment we didn't move, the air thick with unsaid words. Finally he stepped in. "Hey," he started, tone hesitant as he closed the door softly, as if unsure how to begin. "We need to talk." "I know," I said quickly, hands gripping the bed's edge. "But I'm not sure what else there is to say." He continued, voice firm but gentle, stepping closer until he stood right in front of me. "Last night, it can't happen again." I nodded, the words hitting my chest, but I knew it didn't make it easier. He went on, expression softening. "It doesn't change how I feel." My breath caught, and I looked up, heart pounding. "Nathan, we can't. It's wrong. It's complicated." "All real feelings are complicated," he said, voice low like a secret. He reached out, his hand brushing mine in a touch that might have been accidental, but wasn't. "But I can't pretend this isn't real." I closed my eyes, his words cutting through me like a blade. He was right. It was real, terrifyingly so. But real didn't mean right or safe. I pulled my hand back, putting space between us. "We can't do this," I said, voice shaking. "If Greg finds out..." "He's too busy with work to notice what's happening here," Nathan cut in, tone sharp. "That doesn't make it okay," I shot back, frustration rising. "You're his son." "Stepson," he corrected, voice tight. "And I'm an adult, so are you." His words hung, making the room feel smaller. I looked away, hands trembling as I gripped the chair by the window. The sunlight suddenly felt too bright, too exposing. "This is about more than us," I said finally, voice barely a whisper. "It's about Greg, this house, our lives." "It's about what we want," he said, tone gentler again. "And maybe what we deserve." I turned to face him, heart heavy with his words. His eyes searched mine, showing the same turmoil tormenting me, guilt, desire, fear. He stepped closer. "Hey," he whispered my name, sending a shiver up my spine. "Tell me you don't feel it." I tried to speak, but no words came. I couldn't lie to him or myself. His hand reached out again, this time cupping my face gently, thumb brushing my skin, making me lean into the touch, craving the connection I'd suppressed for so long. "Nathan," I murmured, voice trembling. His eyes locked on mine, and in that moment, the world faded. No Greg, no house, no consequences, Just us on the edge of something dangerous and inevitable. "I can't do this," I said, but my voice lacked conviction. "Yes, you can," he replied, words soft, pleading. "We both can." Before I could respond, a car door slammed outside, my heart jumping to my throat. I pulled away, panic surging. "It's Greg," I whispered urgently. Nathan stepped back, face a mix of frustration and resignation. "We'll talk later," he said, tone determined. I nodded, mind racing as I headed for the door, hand on the knob like a lifeline. I heard the front door open, Greg's voice calling out, "Hey, honey," cheerful and oblivious. I forced a smile, stepping into the hall, away from the storm still brewing behind me. But as I greeted him, my thoughts stayed in that room with Nathan, wondering about the choices ahead. The calm of the day would only be a prelude to the coming changes, and deep down, I knew this was just the beginning of a story far from over.